Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. We are starting with a new series that is System Design series. There are 30 most important system design concepts that every experienced software developer is supposed to know. So in this video, we will be discussing on 5 most important system design concept, and then we will have different part of this series which would cover the remaining system design concepts. So let's begin. If we want to understand system design, we first need to understand the core concepts and fundamental building blocks that come up when we are designing any real world system or we are tackling system design interview question. In this video, we will look into the first 5 concepts. Let's get started. So whenever we are developing any web application, there is a concept, very simple yet powerful concept used, that is client server architecture. Every application, they follow this architecture, that is client server architecture. So how this works is, on one side we have client, and client can be anything. Client can be browser, or they can be mobile app, or they can be any other front end application. On the other side, we have server. So what is server? Server is a machine that runs continuously, and it is waiting to handle the incoming request. Clients are going to send the request with some query, or they might want to modify the data or add the data or fetch the data. There would be some kind of request which clients send, and server is waiting to get those requests, and it is going to process the data. Whatever is the request, it is going to accept the request, then it is going to process it and perform some necessary operation in the DB. So servers are connected with DB here. So servers are going to perform some kind of operations there, or it is going to fetch you the data or add the data or delete the data or modify the data, and it is going to send back the response that what had happened recently in DB. Was were we successfully able to delete the data, or were we successfully able to add the data? Whatever is the response, server is going to give us back, and client is going to accept it, that whatever is the response, and then it is going to continue with its own logic, that what it has to implement after getting the response. So this is simple. This is a simple yet very powerful architecture. But the important question here which we should understand is, how would a client know where server is? If it has to send some kind of request, where do you send the request? How do you know where the server is? For example, if I want to open YouTube, and I want to send some request that I want to see some video, then how would I know where YouTube server is? Because in real world there are millions of servers already deployed. So how would we know that for this specific application, this is the server which is going to give me the data? How would we know? So here is where we get to know that there is something called as addresses, that is IP address. That is our second concept, that is IP address. So what happens here is, on internet, every computer, every device, they have their IP address. They IP addresses are used to identify each device. So it can be client or it can be server. Both of them are going to have the IP address. It is, for example, in real world, we have our phone numbers, right? If I want to communicate with you, or I want to send you some kind of request, I want to request you for something, then how would I contact you? I would contact you with your phone number. I would have my phone number, you would have your phone number. If I want to contact to you, then I am going to give you a call from my phone number. That is how I would contact you, right? Similarly, in our real world example, in our applications also, we have client. They are going to have their IP address, and server are going to have their own IP address. So client is going to send the request to the server, to this IP address, that this is my server, this is YouTube server, or this is Google server, or this is some specific application server. So that is how the requests are sent. And yes, IP address is in this format. It is like divided into four parts. First part, then dot, second part dot, 80 dot, triple one. So it can be any number, but this is the format of our IP addresses. Now there is a problem that whenever we are trying to access some server, or we are trying to access some application, we don't type its IP address. We cannot even remember. Suppose I want to I want to see some maybe approximately 10 websites in a day. for my research purpose or anything, then it is not possible for any human to memorize every applications or every server's IP address and go and search. It is not possible. So this is where we get into the topic that is called as DNS. So what is DNS? DNS is domain name systems. It is hard for us to remember the IP address, but we can use something human friendly word like YouTube or Google or any application's name. We need to map a domain. So what happens is, in this example, in this image, you can see whenever a client wants to send a request, first it is going to send the request to DNS, that what is the IP of abcd.com. abcd is easy for me to recognize, right? It is easy for me to go and type abcd.com when compared to typing 156 point some number like that. So DNS is going to give me the IP address. Now client is having the IP address. Client will send the request to that web server where this web server is hosted or deployed at this IP address. So request is sent to the web server and web server is going to give us back the response. That is what is called as DNS. And whenever we are trying to visit any website, our request doesn't always go directly to the server. Sometimes it might go directly to the server, but most of the time they have to pass through something called as proxy or reverse proxy. So let's see what they are, proxy and reverse proxy. So firstly, proxy server. So proxies are also server. They act as middleman between your device and the internet. Okay. When you request a web page, proxy forwards your request to the target server. So whenever you are trying to request anything from the server, so proxy is going to take that request to a targeted server, and it is going to retrieve the response and it is going to send back the response to you. And proxy server is helpful in hiding your IP address. So client would also have some IP address, right? So we would also have some IP address. So proxy server hides our IP address and keeps our location and identity private. And similarly, we have reverse proxy. It does the opposite thing of what proxy does. So it intercepts the client request. So there might be multiple client requesting the data, so it is going to intercept the request and then it is going to forward them to the backend server based upon some kind of predefined rules, that what kind of request is going to reach what kind of server. Whenever we have any communication, whenever any communication is happening, right, in the server, there are some delays which we would observe. So the proxy and reverse proxy is only this much. I'm just telling that. We have next is latency. So what is latency? Whenever we are trying to send any kind of request, there would be in the communication, there is some kind of delay. One of the biggest cause for the delay is the physical distance. For example, our server is in New York or it is in Australia, but the user is sitting in India. Then data has to travel such a long distance to reach the server, and then again it has to come back, like from the server it has to come back to my application from the server. So this physical distance causes the latency. This is called the delay, which is latency. So high latency, what is that? Is high delay can make our application slow and unresponsive, and user is not going to sit for 1 minute 2 minutes just to wait and get the data. They might close the application and they might move on. So latency is not any, like any application cannot afford latency, high latency. One way to reduce latency is by deploying our service across multiple data centers. So instead of having our server very far, we can have it in different location and we can check the nearest location, and then from there we can get the data. This way user can connect to the nearest server, and instead of waiting for the data to travel across the whole world, once a connection is made, how do client and server actually communicate? They communicate via HTTP and HTTPS. So HTTP and HTTPS is the next concept. We will be looking into it afterwards. But latency is what we should know, that if there is a long distance, latency is going to count with the data, and any application we cannot afford higher latency. So if you got to learn anything from this video, then do give a like and subscribe to the channel. If you have any suggestion or feedback, you can let me know in the comment. Thank you for watching.